Hello and welcome to a new episode of T3 podcast series, Bolder Voices, Better Insights, where we spotlight trailblazers in the travel and tourism industry and deep dive into ideas that are shaping a better future for travel. I'm your host, Navneet Mendiratta. Today's episode is one we all need to tune into, whether you're a travel professional, a policy maker, or just someone who loves to explore. We're talking about over-tourism, the pressure it puts on our favorite destinations, and more importantly, what can we all do to travel more responsibly? Joining me is someone who has not only witnessed the evolution of India's tourism landscape over decades, but has also consistently advocated for sustainability and ethical travel. Mandip Singh Soin is the founder of Ibex Expeditions, a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society, and a veteran explorer who has championed the cause of tourism and responsible and sustainable tourism over 4 decades. He's also the founding president of Responsible Tourism Society of India. From leading transformative journeys across the globe to advocating for conservation and community-based travel, Mr. Soin's work continues to inspire the industry towards the more mindful practices. Welcome, Mr. Soin.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
So let's start with the stark reality that many of us in the industry have been grappling with: over-tourism. It is no longer a distant concern, it's right here. Places like Manali, Simla, Rishikesh, Goa, and even Ooty are visibly buckling under the pressure. What's your take on the same?
Yeah, I would love to try and disagree with you, but I can't, because that is, as you said, the stark reality of the sort of tourism scene today. And much as we've been trying for, you mentioned 4 decades, but I think I can flash a whiter beard and claim 5 decades, which is what has been our sort of journey in tourism. So yeah, there is a growing concern that we are making sort of honeypot destinations, and what we need to do is make sure that they don't become honey traps, and obviously we all know what the impacts are of over-tourism, whether it's the local population getting upset or it's the resources of that destination being sucked out by the tourism, flow that happens, etc. So I think we've got to be mindful of all these things, and therefore actions towards government policy or industry action are the 2 main things that we can do. But now the third sort of awareness point, which is the traveler himself or herself, is coming about. So yeah. I think if we can get these 3 together in alignment, then maybe we can bash the devil of over-tourism.
COVID also played a big role in this big boom in domestic tourism. The landscape has clearly changed. You've seen the change. What do you think? The numbers, are we driving more people in? How is it that the changes have come about? More destinations can be seen and people are flocking those destinations. How do you see the evolution of the rush here in India?
Well, obviously what's happened is a 2-way story that's happening post-COVID. One is that you've got the sort of exuberance to get back to pre-COVID levels because everybody lost business and everybody was suffering. So they did everything that they could to gain that tourism back. And in that process, obviously some destinations marketed themselves more, and some destinations, were probably the recipients and the beneficiaries. And that led to a certain over-tourism in those destinations. However, I think the good thing out of COVID was that the realization that many more travelers want to travel more sustainably. So you've got 2 parallel things running, these 2 horses running in parallel, where the hope is that once the need is satisfied post-COVID in terms of getting back to some semblance of normalcy in terms of tourism numbers, then people can breathe a sigh of relief and move on with distributing people around. Say if you're talking in terms of India, then obviously the governments are now aware that we have to open more destinations. And the good thing is that before we open new destinations, there is a plan in place where you have to have a sustainability report of the destination, and then only you will get funding by the central government, if it's in the case of a state government. So those are sort of welcome steps or silver linings, I would say.
True. I mean, a lot of times, the traveler mindset is also to be blamed, and we have to have systems and checks and balances in place, and both the sides, the organizing side and the one that is experiencing, has to kind of gel with that, and I guess adopt responsibility, for take
Yes,
responsibility for how they are traveling.
absolutely.
Also, what we feel is that there is a big mindset shift among Indian travelers. I guess from world over, when these concerns are rising, travelers are forced to think how they have to plan their travel among, like, as consumers. How do you think, as a consumer, a traveler should look at experiencing the best of a destination and responsibly?
Yeah, great question. There's been in the last couple of years, we've done a lot of work at the Responsible Tourism Society of India, and we've drawn up a set of guidelines for being a responsible traveler. And this is something that we've actually asked now the government of India to take on as a national campaign. And the hope is that it would not only be in English or Hindi, but all the vernacular languages as well, from electronic media to print media, because this is something which we need to spread out far and wide. And it's not like a really complicated document. It's simple things that you can do as a traveler, but the overall impact of doing one right thing multiplied by the millions of travelers who travel, you can imagine the impact can be negative or positive as we choose. So I'll give you one small point. For example, we are saying that every traveler should carry a steel water bottle right through the journey, so that you do not have to rely on buying plastic, single-use plastic water bottles that are what the normal travelers do. So if you calculate in one single journey of about 10-15 days, you would at least use 2 to 3 liters of water. And if you just do the simple math, that's an enormous number of water bottles, single-use plastic that is saved. Now at the back end, people might say, oh, but we might go to some destinations where there isn't good water or hinterland areas. Yes, those would be a few exceptions. Or if you're going on a trekking trail, obviously you'll not be using plastic and so on. But the fact is that we are also talking to the industry and the hoteliers, the lodge owners, and the boutique, smaller places where all these hotels have come up. They've agreed that we will provide a dispensing unit for water, which is ultraviolet filter or a reverse osmosis, depending on the local situation, and people will get to know about it. So this is the kind of information that the accommodation industry themselves have to put out into the awareness thing for the traveler, and in turn the tour operator who's organizing it, or like I said, if before that it starts with the government in a part of a campaign. Or let's take another simple thing, like say if you're taking flights, and we all know that nowadays it's so easy to measure your carbon footprint and to offset it. So if you just paid a 50 or 100 rupees or a 200 rupees, or even if it's a 1,000 rupees, and you could travel guilt free because of your carbon offset, I think it's a good practice. And these are things that at least the younger generation seems to be much more aware of, and wanting to put the money and wanting to make the right choices and so on. So I think there is hope.
You did touch upon travel trade. What is the role that travel trade can play in enabling, this movement of change? And how can agents and DMCs and tour operators shape this more conscious behavior?
Yeah. So I think as far as industry action is concerned, I've realized that it is always a case of a carrot and stick policy, because if you leave it for the goodness of the industry to do the right action, I'm afraid it ain't going to happen. Much as I love our tourism industry and so on, I think you have to have some amount of minimum standards of regulation where you have to pledge to be able to, work at certain things sustainably. So if you can put it into, let's say, the guideline for what approval you get as a tour operator or what approval you would get as a hotelier or a lodge owner, then I think it becomes, fairly secure that we will be able to, achieve those standards. Yeah. Otherwise, naturally, people, try and wriggle out of the hard work, and then you don't achieve much, because then only the few who are evolved and are, forward thinking take it up. But we have to make sure that across the industry, everybody comes onto the same page. And I'm afraid that is only done through a certain amount of coercion or a government regulation, etc.
Even while planning itineraries, I think, some things can be already woven into that, especially when you're doing festivals or you're doing, bigger events. Certain
Yeah,
guidelines can always be, set so that people know what to do and people know what to expect. And when they're working their travel or they're planning it.
yeah. So you see, there's another story. Now, apart from regulation, we've also got market forces. So our hope is, and at least the Responsible Tourism Society and a world over of many sustainable tourism organizations, that if we can keep influencing the traveler, and that's where people like you all come in as media and as people who can actually spread the message to the traveler. If they are responsible and they ask the right questions to their trade partners, right, DMCs or tour operators or hotels that they choose, then I think the industry will also fall in line, because that is the reality that, if the customer is demanding something, and if the demand is right, or if the demand is to become more sustainable or to be able to be answerable to certain things by the consumer, then I think it's a great step forward. So that gap needs to be plugged. As I said, it comes back to the awareness campaign.
Yeah, it's all about the messaging actually at the end of the day. And travel shouldn't be about checklists. I mean, one should be asked to stay clear of maybe overcrowded areas, or maybe not just go for photo ops when they are traveling.
It doesn't take too long to make yet another unknown place popular, because luckily in India, given the diversity of geographical features, of built heritage features, you can pick up pretty much any place and just make it popular. So you can actually give the spread and the benefit of your presence to a different area, to the local community there, and so on. So I think as people realize, they are willing to do this. The natural tendency would be for many people, as per the surveys that we've seen, that they would like to be traveling more responsibly and all. So yeah, it's a question of being a little smart about, like you said, communication, possibly a little bit of regulation, and possibly about making sure that the demand is right, ultimately.
So let's talk solutions now. What are some of the promising models that we are seeing across India? Are there any India-based solutions that you find inspiring and would want to talk about and share?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that if we looked at certain areas or certain states that are ahead of the curve, it's quite easy to say something like Kerala would be one state that would come to my mind. And I remember going there many, many years ago when the state of Kerala was nominated for a very well-known award called the WTTC Tourism for Tomorrow Award. And they made it to the finalist selection, amongst two other international destinations. And as a judge, when I went there, and obviously they had to showcase some of their best practices, that's when I realized that they'd actually taken it quite seriously, not just at a few individual, good practices, but they were trying to spread it out into the industry. They were also working very closely with sort of government policy, working with trade. For example, the concept of having a local community supply all the fruit and vegetables to a local hotel. You know, I mean, at one level today, we would think it's a no-brainer because it's a logical thing. Your carbon footprint is reduced, it's easy, it's probably less expensive for the hotel to send trucks and get it from hundreds of kilometers away, etc. But those are things that were consciously done. So like that, there are many pockets of excellence in India which are good practices. I mean, there are amazing wildlife lodges that are doing some great work in terms of where their sort of tourism dollar is also helping with conservation. They work in tandem with certain park, guides and park rangers, where they some have even supplied equipment for patrolling and anti-poaching and all that. They educate travelers. There's a lot of lectures that go on. So there is a large number of individual efforts that are being showcased. And in fact, as we speak, one of our jobs is to actually catalog some of these best practices in India and to try and see whether we can have that as a template which could then obviously be replicated. So very soon, I think you'll have the RTSOI coming out with a little booklet, because the government had asked us once to put it all together. And, even if it's large hotel chains, it's very nice to see somebody like an ITC or somebody like a Taj that have got very good programs of sustainability embedded in their process, So it kind of makes a good story for us to say that, yes, there is a lot happening in India.
So we would be looking forward to the RTSOI, document that you have put in place, which would be, I think it'll come handy for everyone, because you do need some set guidelines. People like to follow that, and it gives you a direction somewhere.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. And I think it'll take us another, maybe 6 months or thereabouts to get the show on the road in terms of capturing all the good practices. And, it might be hotels, lodges, tour operators, destinations, etc. Yeah.
Do you have any models in mind when you you're putting this together?
Models as in, we'll most likely use the sort of templates of certain awards and recognitions that people have achieved. And out of that, we'll see which ones are the most relevant, because obviously there is national awards that are given for some amount of sustainability work. There are also international awards like PATA Gold Awards, all of them together, and see if we can dredge up most of the companies or organizations and all that have been mentioned. So that's the way to go, I think, on that front. Yeah.
Talking about model states, the other state that came to my mind was Meghalaya. I think among the first ones to have, the cleanliness and practices with lodges, with homestays, promoting, community involvement there, where everybody was kind of involved. And even Uttarakhand, for that matter, with the Sustainable Villages campaign, has been able to achieve that. It's a different thing that a lot of destinations within Uttarakhand are overcrowded today.
Yes, I was gonna put that caveat there quickly, because I'm a resident of Uttarakhand as well, and I see in front of my own eyes what is going on. And much as we keep trying to counsel through either direct contact or at conferences and all, it takes a very long time. And the sad part is, as we all know, that once a destination has been overcrowded or ruined, it's very difficult to pull it back. So therefore, you have the bad situations with the Masuris and the Manalis and the other destinations which are vastly overbuilt and obviously get very crowded. And the sad part is that Uttarakhand, a lot of new destinations. Let's take Mukteshwar for example. They're promoting it as a tourism destination, but there isn't enough of a road network or parking spaces or simple sort of guidelines on how many rooms can that location absorb and things like that. So that's just one small example of a new destination that has been identified. So I think we've got to take care about all these very simple, what should be really common sense, but unfortunately in the push from the industry or the lack of understanding by sometimes government people who want to provide jobs to people for tourism, which is a very laudable aim, but they sometimes don't do the due diligence, which is why there's another very interesting idea that we've been toying with, and I actually gave the proposal to the government, which is to say that why don't we get the government of India to undertake a study, which is, and it's not too late right now. So we identified 10 places which have got overcrowded. We identified 10 places that are likely to get overcrowded as the trends are showing. And we said, let's choose 10 places that haven't been, trampled upon or thought about in terms of tourism, but they have the potential to become destinations tomorrow. And then let's do a kind of a assessment as to where they stand, what can we put in terms of some reversals, some checks and balances. Can we allow more hotels to come up? Should we allow some sort of a system? Like, you can also use technology. I mean, if I'm driving up to Mussoorie for a weekend or for a stay, why can't we have a network where hoteliers are obliged to take in only prior booking situations with people going up? You can't have, people sort of going up in these road systems where there's traffic delays of up to 2 hours. I mean, that's torture and that's not even safe. And likewise, if you have a situation where say 80 or 90% of the hotel capacity has been booked up in a destination, there should be a monitor, a portal that you can get to know. So it's so easy now to use that technology to harness, but we need to have a regulation, we need to have the associations coming on board and such like. So I mean, solution wise, I'm sure there are solutions for every problem that we create or that is there,
No, true that. I mean, these days, apps can be developed which can help you out, like when you check into a place or when there's so much of information advancement in that case. I mean, hotels are doing it. They're doing it with the bookings. We can always have it for a destination, perhaps.
Yeah.
How about off-season and dispersed travel campaigns?
Yeah, great idea. But before I come to that, let me this mention of the app triggered the other thought that is something that we've been working on. We have also suggested that we come up with an app called the Responsible Traveler app, which can be embedded within the Incredible India app. Yeah, and what that app would do is that suppose if every traveler had it in their phone, yeah, and you were say traveling into hinterlands like Arunachal, Ladakh, or Uttarakhand, Himalaya, deserts, forests, wherever. Now, so we know we have a problem that people are generally not very mindful about their garbage disposal. And if I knew that if I was chucking out garbage from my car in Ladakh, and if I knew my next car had the app and I could be photographed, and this app should have the ability that you could take a photograph and give a GPS location and send it out to the ministry and to the RTSO at the same time. Where you've seen the number plate of the car and the guy is chucking something out, yeah? Or sometimes when these cars or jeeps that we've heard of, those terrible practices where they've gone into the Pangong Lake, for example, which is a sacred lake for Ladakhis, and you just simply can't do that. So then, guy gets captured over there on the photograph. So it's a little bit of the sort of, I'm not saying it's the best strategy of naming and shaming, but it needs to be a deterrent, because we have to come up with some solutions which are going to work on the ground, and this can also actually lead to help in emergency situations also. So there's a lot that we can develop through apps. But coming back to your main question, which was that can we promote lesser known areas and off-season travel? This is absolutely one of the things that we should be doing, and it's a good strategy to harness areas and push people into a lower season. And it's sometimes the low season is not made up of what weather is dictating. It is made up of other situations of when certain countries would yield tourists and so on, So I think it's fair to say that, we all know about these monsoon magic things where you can go into places like even Rajasthan or Kerala or, Goa, etc. So it's just a way of pitching it differently. And if some people enjoy the monsoon and they're paying much less, so be it. It's a win-win for everyone then, so it's a good idea.
Also, lesser people means that, the experience gets better when we look at that. On your app again, is there a timeline that you're planning to, kind of look into and developing?
No, these are things that actually the government needs to fund. Our society won't be able to fund it, and it's really the responsibility of the government to do this. So whilst they were very supportive in the time that we came up with the sort of responsible traveler guideline, we were promoting it on social media, they would repost it, and so there was some sort of synergy. But I would imagine that it's time that the government, especially the Ministry of Tourism, and indeed some of the state governments might be able to take it up individually, because we can't keep relying on the Ministry of Tourism for too long, because sometimes it takes enormously long for them to act, which is the Achilles heel there sometimes. They've been very proactive and cooperative in many areas. But some of these things, like, for example, they created this wonderful idea of the National Sustainable Tourism Board, which was done in the time of Arvind Singh when he was a secretary. And we had a MOU with them and the United Nations Environment Program. But I'm a little surprised that in the last year or year and a half, there hasn't been a single meeting. So how the hell do you progress, certain things that you need to do in a concerted manner for the country and for the states? So we are also hoping that we might actually be working and pushing together with the ministry as well as the state governments to make sure that something happens on the ground, So, and if they can fund it, then the app should be done. And if they can fund the study, which we even applied through the CII committee, which has a national body of tourism. But so far, there hasn't been action, unfortunately.
All of this requires, you need to look at a bigger picture, as they say, when we go along, to, think of it on a larger canvas and to put it all in place. Then things fall in place, I suppose. But systematic changes also require industry-wide support. What steps do you, like to see on that front?
Yeah, I have to say again, if I was able to articulate a little bit of disappointment with the Ministry of Tourism's sort of lack of inertia, I would say the same might be relevant for the industry as well. To the extent that they need to put their shoulder towards sustainable tourism or responsible travel, I don't think it's happening. For starters, we need to have most of the tour operator or hotel associations and all coming into the fold of the responsible tourism national body. And if they can be supportive, if they can adopt sort of the one simple way is membership, and it's peanuts money for them, but it's being on the same page, trying to communicate the same message, and trying to update us with all the good practices, so that we as a body, as a national body, can actually promote them and say that, look guys, this is happening here, take that good practice. We used to do a lot of workshops, even that is probably now gone a little bit low in terms of numbers, because there isn't that industry or the state government demand anymore. So I think they need to be a little more proactive, because it's no point saying that, look at my good practice, or somebody else gets up and say, in this state I'm doing this. You are absolutely right. We've got to look at India as a destination. We can't just have varying experiences for the traveler. I mean, if you look at, let's say, one of the fine destinations of ecotourism worldwide, I would say look at Costa Rica, or I would say look at New Zealand. And there are so many countries that would give you an amazing experience, whichever part of the country you're in, So that should be our aspiration. And obviously we need to work in tandem, and the industry needs to step up its act, because again, even if the Taj and the ITC hotels are doing some amazing work, it's not good enough for us to have 30 other chains that are not mindful. Similarly with destinations. I mean, today, if we are overdeveloping or developing Lakshadweep in a wrong way, which is to get water villas like Maldives, I think that's the wrong way to go. Our society is also a watchdog, and we flagged this issue that we cannot, we should not have, water villas in the lagoons there, because we are going to ruin the lagoons. And the moment they put out these water villas into the sort of lagoon and sea, firstly, even visually, it makes it look a little more like Disneyland, and you don't need that. You need to harness the accommodation on those tiny islands. You need pristine sea. You need a sense of the original wilderness, as it were. In fact, that is the bigger problem today, that in our wilderness areas, we need to have a very conscious idea of how much human intervention you want to make. And the more pristine you can leave certain areas as is, the better it is for the human soul. It is, the yearning for the travelers to go to areas where there is nothing, and that is pure. Of course, there is always a balance about road access and this and that, but you have to be very judicious. I mean, even a country like Switzerland, which has telepherics and helicopter tourism and all that sort of developed huts in every nook and cranny, even they had to declare the Aletsch Glacier as a World Heritage Site, so that they could preserve at least the sanctity of the traveler or the trekker who was going to the glacier, and you would not have helicopter tourists coming and hovering on top. So with the declaration of the heritage site, they could tell the helicopters, sorry, it's a no-fly zone, So before we get to that point, we should be able to do certain things like this in the mindset.
At the policy level, do you think rewards and incentives work?
I think they have to, and they will, because in any situation where you are desperate to get some movement, you've got to dangle a carrot, right? So that carrot of the incentive or the reward. In fact, I just saw some article somewhere where the current DG Suman Billa was mentioning something about incentivizing good practices or something. And I think, though in the ideal situation, we should be saying, no, it should be pure, it should be what the industry responsibility is, etc. But I think to trigger things, it's not a bad idea. I mean, the incentives even if you give some incentive, it can't be forever. Once you get the people across a certain threshold, then you can take it away, because they would have anyway earned much more by attracting the responsible traveler. Because there are, let's be aware, there are people within India and there are people outside of India who will simply not travel to India or to certain destinations because they know it is not responsible enough. They would go to other destinations where they know that everything is done more properly in terms of disposal of garbage, their carbon footprints, their whole thing about community benefits, wildlife, animal conservation, the whole lot. There are lots of people who make choices on that now.
So saying that in that sense, everybody, including the tourism boards, the private sector, media, us, travelers, they all have a role to play. And you have painted a very beautiful vision. I mean, that's practical and hopeful. I mean, one thinks that changes can be made and changes have to be made, I guess. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners, especially those in the business of travel?
Yeah, no, I would say that, tourism is honestly a very powerful tool. It just needs to be used in the right way, because of all the times that I've been on various judging panels, seeing good practices around the world, it's really inspiring to see some of this stuff happening and to see that what tourism can do on the global picture, for destinations, for conservation, for community development. So it's all there, but we just need to accelerate the process, because the battle is against, I think, the over-tourism numbers, zapping you on one side, as against harnessing all the numbers in a sustainable manner. So I would say the people who are in tourism are blessed. The people who are travelers have a great privilege that they are able to travel. And I think that's the way we should cast tourism or travel, that it is indeed a privilege to see the wonders of this amazing planet that we live on. So for the people who are in the business, I think it's a tremendous opportunity to do a lot of good. It's just that if they have that will, and sooner or later they will benefit. As the old adage goes, good environment sense is good business sense. So I'm hoping that, people can take it forward in the right way for the country and for the planet.
Wise words and a timely reminder. Thank you so much, Mr. Soin, for joining us on T3's podcast series, Bolder Voices, Better Insights. The conversation, I would say, is just about beginning.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
And thank you, listeners. You've been listening to the T3 podcast series, Bolder Voices, Better Insights. Stay tuned for more stories that challenge the status quo and inspire responsible transformation in travel. Until next time, goodbye.